Hi everybody, it's Professor Wells again. So we are exploring the topic of mind and body, and today in our mini video lecture I'm going to show you three works of art that depict the male body. And what you're going to find is that we're going to initially begin with a work of art that focuses on the physical body itself, how it appears externally. But then the next two artworks will take a look at how we see both the representation of the outer body, but also the inner body or inner life of its subject. So let's pivot to the PowerPoints and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, let's take a look at this work of sculpture, male torso, parentheses, ancestor figure, from the Bole people of Africa, dating from circa 19th to early 20th century. It's wood, and it's approximately 20 inches in height. This is an example of sculpture from a culture where the naturalism of the human body isn't the priority. It's likely representing an ancestor. Here you can see that the head makes up about a third of the body. Sculptors often notch their wood in thirds in many parts of Africa, which brings emphasis to the head and the neck. And that's believed to be where the most important part of the person resides. The face and the mind. While the chest and shoulders appear somewhat proportional and naturalistic, you can see the description of muscle groupings that we're familiar with our own bodies. From the side view, you can see how the body has been stylized with counterbalanced elements and the use of patterns to represent braided hair, as well as patterns of scarification. All right, let's pivot on to a work of sculpture. Some of you may already be familiar with this famous marble sculpture from the Italian High Renaissance. The artist of it is none other than the famous rock star of the Renaissance, Michelangelo. The title of it is David, from 1501 to 1504. It is a larger-than-life sculpture at approximately 14 feet. So, who is David? Looking at this sculpture, does anyone have a hint at who he represents? Well, you might be thinking of David and Goliath. David was the hero from the biblical story of David and Goliath. And he became popular again in the Renaissance, particularly in the city and Republic of Florence, as their symbol of civic liberty over an enemy. When you look at David, though, you wonder, where's Goliath? Well, Michelangelo chose to represent the story seconds before David took on the giant. He has in his right hand the stones he'll use in the sling he is holding over his shoulder. And again, with artists of the High Renaissance, we see an interest in representing the athletic physique akin to what we see in ancient Greece. And I have an example for you from the 5th century on the right-hand side. David, though he seems to be resting in that classical contrapposto stance, also borrowed from the ancient Greeks, where you have one leg supporting the weight of the body while the other appears naturalistic and relaxed. His head is shown turned in Goliath's direction, so imagine the enemy giant off stage, if you will. And when you zoom in a little closer and examine David's face, you'll see Michelangelo is not only representing convincing physicality of this biblical hero, but also his inner psychology. So David's brow is furrowed, his gaze is fixed, his neck muscles and sinews are strained. His veins even show in his arms and massive hands. He looks pumped up and ready for action. That's some real psychological intensity conveyed through marble. So, physicality as well as the inner state of being. That's what Michelangelo brought to the table for sculpture in the Renaissance. Finally, let's take a look at 20th century artist Lucian Freud. This is called Lee Under the Skylight from 1994. British artist Lucian Freud is known as a portrait artist. And yes, he is related to Sigmund Freud by chance. He's his grandson. There are countless studies of the human body in art history, and I know we've taken a look at a lot of them. In fact, many of you studio art majors will have to take a life drawing class with a model in a fixed pose to learn how to render the human body. The human body has also been the obsession of artists since the ancient Greeks, for instance, who perfected its realism, yet focused on body types that reflect the kind of fitness of an Olympic athlete or god. Here, Freud's chosen a very tall man of a certain girth. Our vantage point of him isn't straight on. Instead, he's been placed on a pedestal like a sculpture and poses in a corner, his head almost meeting the skylight above him, giving him a monumental yet claustrophobic appearance. His legs are crossed at the ankle, as if he's trying to make himself smaller. Freud's portraits aren't afraid to zero in on all of the sitter's features. A balding head, sagging chest, flabby torso. That light from above casts shadows that don't airbrush anything. He's far from the rippling muscles of nude males depicted in art history. But there's more to it than that. It's the expression on the face and that self-conscious way the man crossed those legs and almost extends his left hand to cover his nudity that tells you about the inner world of this subject when so much of the outer is on display. So a different take on portraiture in the 20th century, which conveys that tension between the physical, external appearance of the body and the inner life of the subject. All right, everybody. I'll see you soon for the next video lesson.